The thing is this. We can talk about what the teachings teach about non-duality, about self-realization, about the mind, about thinking, about emotions, about reactions, about conditioning. We can talk about all of those things. And the thing that I am most interested in is that while we can talk about all of those things, and many teachers talk about all those things, and there are many, different angles that these things are spoken about, different schools, so to speak, like Zen and Advaita Vedanta, non-dual teachings, mystical teachings from different religions and so forth. The thing that is most important, as far as I can tell, is not so much all of that, because it's interesting. It's interesting to hear the different ways that these things are spoken of. It's interesting to learn more about the different dimensions of these realities. Learn about consciousness. Learn about the brain science and so forth. Learn about psychology. Learn about the nature of the conditioned self, the psyche, human behavior. All of it, right? The thing that keeps coming back for me is this business of all of the people who are involved in these teachings and practices. It seems to be the case, and I think if you look into it, if you go online and you listen to interactions between the people who are out there teaching these things these days, and the people who are listening to those teachings and doing the practices, the thing that seems to be the case is that, for the most part, most people are not having the experience. For the most part, most people are not having the experience. For the most part, most people are trying to have the experience, right? And most people want to have the experience. Most people are in different places about understanding the details of it all. I think the primary understanding that is the source of the suffering and the confusion, as far as I can tell, is the idea that people are confused about who they are, right? That this is the bottom line here. That this is the source of suffering, that you're being something that doesn't exist. You're being something that's not real. And so when people hear that, and when people hear somebody who can speak well about this, talk about what that cost you, right? Talk about the suffering, the consequences of it, talk about the human condition, talk about the humanity, the suffering of humanity, how it manifests itself in politics, how it manifests itself in addiction, how it manifests itself in mental illness, how it manifests itself in criminal behavior, how it manifests itself in misery, human misery. And I think if anybody who is interested in the possibility of being happy, anybody that wants to be happy, anybody that wants to be sane, anybody that wants to have life work, when they listen to these descriptions of the way it is, the human condition, it's hard not to see it. It's hard not to to agree with it. I mean, especially if you're being honest with yourself and you're looking at your own life, and if you're looking at your own life, you can't miss the fact that there's addictive behavior going on. You can't miss the fact that you're operating as a separate self, that you're being aggressive at times, you're being defensive at times, you're interpreting everything all the time that's going on. The voice in your head is interpreting everything all the time that's going on. You have good days and bad days, you have ups and downs, you experience anxiety, you experience fear, you experience different degrees of depression. Life appears difficult, you're struggling, you're coping, you're trying to make it work. You find yourself again and again falling into the patterns of behavior that most of humanity is involved with because it's got such a hypnotic pull to it. There's so much sophisticated psychology involved in terms of the commercials that are selling you things that it's hard to keep up with it. It's hard to stay aware of what's going on all the time. And so in regard to this message, the reality of it is that the majority of people, as far as I can tell, and I don't think I'm delusional about it. I mean, if you look for yourself on the internet and you listen to people interacting with the teachers, I think you'll see the same thing I see, that, you know, that most people seem to be in some type of process where they're trying to get this, you know, where they're trying to have this experience. They want to have this experience. And I think the thing that makes that resonate the most, the most in the most powerful way for people is that I don't think anybody can deny, no matter what the details are, I don't think anybody can deny that you in your life have wanted something. What it is that you've wanted may have changed many, many times, but you've wanted something. And if you really look at it, what you've wanted is you've wanted to experience a certain experience. You know, that may be associated with money, it may be associated with getting a new car, it may be associated with a relationship, it may be associated with having a beer, it may be associated with watching football, it may be, you know, it's associated with all kinds of things for people. It may be associated with getting a degree. You know, if you ask anybody, what are you up to in your life, right? They're going to tell you what they want. They're going to tell you what they're up to, what they're going after, what they're trying to realize. And what they're trying to realize, when you boil it all down, is an experience. You know, what is it really when you get the new car that's all about? Well, it's about how it feels to have the new car, right? The new car seems to make me happy. I wanted it, now I have it. One of the things about this whole business of desire, if you really look closely at it and see that once you get something that you wanted, you don't want it. This is a very interesting thing if you catch what I'm saying. If you want something and you get it, right? Now you don't want it, you have it. And when you have it, there may be a certain period of time when you feel this pleasure, this elation, this accomplishment, you know, now I have it. I've wanted so long to have. I saw a YouTube video today of a guy who gave his father a Ferrari, and apparently his father had mentioned that he always dreamt of having a Ferrari. Well, you know, for Ferrari, I don't know how much they cost, but they cost a lot of money. You know, very few people are going to have a Ferrari, right? So in this video, he had put a blindfold on his dad and manipulated him into the seat of the Ferrari, you know, and then took the blindfold off, right? And his father, it's a very moving thing. His father started to cry because he was so moved by the fact that his son did this and gave him this very expensive sports car, right? So he sat there with his head in his hands crying. And then I'm sure after this video that, you know, he really felt happy and fulfilled and elated and appreciative, you know, to have the Ferrari. And, you know, probably, you know, drove it a little bit, right? But then, yeah, because I had a friend that had a Ferrari, so, but then, especially if you're not a really wealthy person, the Ferrari is a very valuable asset to have, right? So, but then you're not going to drive it too much because, you know, you might get into an accident. And if Ferrari get into an accident, that's a really upsetting thing, right? So you keep it in the garage a lot of the time. You look at it, but this whole elation and this pleasure will eventually start to settle down and subside, right? And then there's going to be concerns about, you know, how expensive it is to repair a Ferrari, and, you know, but it's guaranteed that this experience will not remain the way it was when it first occurred, right? And this is the way it always is about everything, right? So so at some point, if you see that this is the case, then if nothing else, maybe you'll realize that what you really want is an experience, not a car, right? Because when you get the car, what is the car giving you? It's giving you an experience, right? So what you really want is an experience. So if you pay attention, you can see it in other people, you can see it in yourself, that there's this wanting, this desire, as the Buddha said, the source of suffering is desire, right? This wanting, this desire for something, you see, for something. And it's interesting because when you really get into these things and you really hear the teachings and you really look at what's really going on and you find out that what you really want is nothing, this is interesting. What you really want is nothing, because what you really want is the experience that's available to us all the time, which is the experience of who we actually are, which is not a thing, it's nothing, is what you really want. But the thing is this, and this is the thing that I think is the thing to really pay attention to, that of all the people who are in this process of seeking and searching and getting and finding out what they got wasn't quite it and getting more, and finding out what it wasn't it and getting more, of all the people that are doing that, and then especially of all the people that are doing the spiritual seeking, right? So now they figure, oh, now I got it. Now I got my eye on the right thing now. If I get this will be the thing that will fulfill me forever and ever. I will be experiencing an ongoing, consistent experience of well-being and fulfillment and happiness. So now, at least now I'm in the right ballpark, right? But then among those people, what you see is how many people actually have this experience. What you see if you look around is most people are in the process. They're in the process. So I think this is a very important thing to pay attention to, because if you really want to have this experience, I think it's important to recognize how few people are having it, how few people are getting this experience, right? And then what they do is they look at people that claim they have it, right? And then they analyze that person and say, okay, what did they do? Maybe if I do what they did, right? Maybe if I go to India and I get a guru, because they had a guru, maybe that will be the thing, right? Or whatever it is, right? Something that they're trying to figure out that is the formula, right, for this awakening. But the thing that I want to point out that as far as I can tell is and maybe this isn't it, but it seems to be that the barrier to the realization, right, without it being recognized or realized, the barrier to the realization is that the person hears the message, the person hears about the possibility of not being the person. And the person begins the process of not being a person. Now, if you just listen to that, right? The person begins the process of not being a person. Now, the person doesn't recognize that the person's in the process of trying not to be a person, right? As this is occurring, they're listening, they're learning, they're questioning, right? They're figuring, well, okay, I'm learning, I see things a little more clearly, maybe I'm closer, right? Like that. But they fail to see that as long as that first mistake was made, nothing's possible. As long as that first mistake is made, nothing's possible. That's why I think it's important to continue to repeat that statement that Ramana Maharshi made about there is a presupposed non-existent self. This is what I think has to get through the screen, the veil. There's a presupposed non-existent self that seeks liberation for the non-existent self. Now what happens is that people hear that, because that's pretty clear, right? That's pretty direct. That's saying it pretty clearly. You can't say it much clearer than that, right? But what people don't get is the listening for that's not recognized, right, is that it's the person listening to that and claiming an understanding of that, and then proceeding from there as a person, to not be the person. But what I'm trying to point to is what is the mechanism that's causing the problem here? You see what I'm saying? What is the mechanism that's causing the problem? Because one of the things that seems to be so is when a person is not aware of being a person, right? If a person is so fully occupied, if their attention is so fully occupied that they have no awareness of being a person, that they experience the freedom that's being spoken of. This is one of the reasons why I think a lot of people in high performance sports get high, the zone, get high from doing it, because what they're doing requires so much attention, such a complete involvement of their attention that there is no self-awareness. They're not able to maintain the idea that they're there. All that's there is what they're doing, right? So that you would think that would be a good clue, right? But as long as the person is claiming this information, it just turns it into shit. It just turns it into another good idea, another concept, right? And then for some people, the person denies the possibility. For some people who've been involved in this for a long time, they start to claim that they're somehow an exception to this. That I just don't get it. I just don't get it. And if you listen to people talk, even people who are relatively new in this business, right? They say things like, "Oh, this is very difficult. Very difficult. I just don't get it. I can't see it. I can't experience it." Listen to that. Listen to that. It's so obvious that it's the person, denying the possibility. It's the person denying the possibility. When the possibility is irrefutably available. You can't win an argument about reality, right? If you talk to somebody who sees reality as it is, you cannot win an argument with them about reality because they have all the evidence, right? They have all the evidence. If somebody tries to tell me that they are the thinker of their thoughts, or if somebody tries to tell me that they are a person, right? All I have to do to win the argument is say, okay, prove it. Show me. Where's the person? So you can't win that argument. You may try and claim that you're winning the argument by some kind of reasoning process, because there are people that are pretty lost in the world of thinking, right? It's like somebody like Descartes who said, I think therefore I am. That was something that was bought by almost everybody. Well, there wasn't much questioning about that. But if you stop and look at it, it doesn't make any sense, because who is it that thinks? If you stop and look at who is it that thinks, where's the evidence for that? And if you stop and look at it, it's obvious that unless there's an awareness in which thinking appears, how could there be thinking? And there is evidence for awareness, right? There is evidence for awareness. It is the realist experience that a human being is having. The realist experience a human being is having is the experience of existing, isn't it? Of being aware. So the thing that I wanted to focus on here is this. I wanted to draw your attention to this business of paying attention to getting tricked. Paying attention to getting tricked. And even if I say paying attention to getting tricked, this is how language is so slippery. If I say pay attention to getting tricked, the person will say, well, he must be talking to me, right? Well, he must be talking to me. He's telling me to pay attention. to not be tricked. That's how slippery it is, right? But when I'm saying pay attention to getting tripped, I'm talking to awareness. I'm not talking to a thing. I'm talking to nothing. I'm talking to no thing. I'm not talking to a thing. I'm not talking to something that exists in a form. I'm talking to something that's alive. Something that's alive. I'm talking to what's actually hearing my words. I'm talking to what is actually seeing through your eyes. Not the thought process. But that's the thing. You see, the thought process is got such a complete hold that even when you attempt to move your attention away from it briefly, you can't maintain it. It's got such a complete hold that a thought will appear, right? And you're so highly conditioned to be concerned that you're going to miss something that you go to the thought instead of staying with the truth, instead of staying with the awareness. Long enough to discover its intelligence, long enough to discover that you don't have to think to know what's going on. That's a major revelation, isn't it? That you don't have to think to know what's going on. Most of what's going on that you're aware of, you're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about everything in this room right now. Awareness is aware of it and has a direct knowledge of it. And that's a demonstration of the fact that awareness has intelligence. It knows what's going on. But what we do is we put something in front of that, right? We put something in front of that, the thought process we put in front of that, which is limited, and depend on that to know what's going on. And we don't have much of an opportunity to experience the truth about it because we don't stay out of the thought process long enough. Typically we don't stay out of the thought process long enough to allow ourselves to discover the truth about awareness. So that's the thing, I'm suggesting to you that if you recognize that most people miss the point, most people continue to unwittingly be a person trying not to be, right? That's something that's very important to contemplate, that you will fall into the trap of being a person trying not to be a person. Well, you see how slippery it is. It's a fine, Frank said it's a fine line because you're in awareness trying not to be a person, right? Who's in awareness? See how easily it takes you? Who's in awareness? No, you're not in awareness. That's how it happens. It happens like that, right? And you don't catch it. You don't catch it. That's why it's important to understand that the awareness is an already thing. It's not something you have to do. You see, it's an already thing. It's in the background all the time. So it's not about doing something different. It's about noticing what's happening that is distracting you from the truth. Well, no, see, when you see things as they are, you don't want to be a person. You don't want to be a person. If you really understand that being a person is the problem, right? As some of the teachers say, the freedom is not for you, it's from you, right? So it's not, no, you don't want to be a person. If you see clearly what's happening, you don't want to be a person. Yes, it may be true that you must continue to play the game. That's different from being a person, right? You must continue to be in the world, but you don't have to be of the world. You must continue to identify with your body and the personality as the piece on the board in the game we're playing, right? But just as it is the case that it's a piece on the board, when you're playing Monopoly, you don't think that you're the piece on the board, do you? No, but in life you do. You do. And if you did think that you were a piece on the board in Monopoly, Monopoly would be a very uncomfortable game to play, wouldn't it?